So now let's talk about a whole nother world. All of these stories are like another world, but this really was another world. Go ahead.
Well, the name of this story is Passover at Bubbie's house. Now, Passover at Bubbie's house was the big event of the year, and we all looked forward to it because it was so special. It would begin about a week before the actual holiday with house cleaning. Bubbie would clean her already immaculate house as though it had never been cleaned before. The Passover dishes would be taken down and soaked overnight in the bathtub. Likewise, the glasses and the Pasadicus silverware. That means the silverware they only use at Passover time. Everything would be finished and ready so that the mass cooking could begin for the Seder. Now, on that very special day, my mother and I would go to my Bubbie's house, where we would soon be joined by my Aunt Toby, my Aunt Terry, who would come early to help. There were wooden boards on the kitchen sink and on the countertop to differentiate the Passover kitchen from the kitchen of the rest of the year. Looking back, I am amazed at what came out of that tiny little kitchen. There was no dishwasher, no microwave, no food processor, no freezer, or any other modern appliance that we know about. Nothing came from a box. Everything was made from scratch, and it was made on the day of the Seder. The kitchen was tiny, and I do mean tiny. It was a little eat-in kitchen. There was, of course, no dining room, and all of the festivities were held in the living room, which was also not a very large room. The sofa was on one long wall, and a table was put in front of it, with people sitting on the sofa on one side, and then bridge chairs on the other side, with bridge tables at the ends because there were always more people than that table could accommodate. Now, all of my aunts and uncles were there, and as they began to have children, my cousins were there, and we would play all day while our mothers helped Bubbie. I must say that from my observations, my Bubbie did the most of the work, but I never ever heard my Bubbie complain. Never. I never heard her say how tired she was. She just cooked, served, and cleaned up, and seemed to enjoy every minute of the festivities with all of her family around her. As evening approached, Zadie would go off to shul, and one by one, my father and my uncles would come home from work. We would all sit and wait for Zadie to come home, and I can assure you that no one was ever had one mouthful of food until he arrived. And we were sitting at the Seder. It was strictly forbidden. We were all sure that Zadie was the absolute last one to walk out of the shul, but finally he would arrive. He would walk in, and he would come straight to me, put his hands on my head, and bless me. I held this exalted position until I was 5 years old, when my cousin Gail was born, and then came all my other cousins, all girls, and the youngest was always the one to be blessed by my Zadie. My grandfather had 5 granddaughters, and he always compared himself to a very popular entertainer of the day named Eddie Cantor, who also had 5 daughters and always talked about them on his radio show. When my cousin Jeffrey, the youngest, was born, that was a great day for my Zadie. The table always looked beautiful. There was Bubbie's best Passover tablecloth, the Passover dishes, the glassware and the silver, all gleaming after their 24-hour soaking in the bathtub, and the green depression glass tray, the decanter, and the wine glasses. There was the matzah, the homemade horseradish, red and white, and the matzah plate with all of the appropriate things on it. At the end of the table, there was always a vase with fresh yellow daffodils. And by the way, I have that Passover plate and 7 of her green depression glass glasses, And one day, my darling little Sharon, they will all be yours. At any rate, we would all sit down and begin the Seder. Now, the word Seder means order, and there is a definite order to it. Now, some people may skip around a little bit. They may even leave out a part or two, but not my Zadie. He was a purist, and we had to sit through every single word. And if everyone ever made a comment or tried to say anything, Zadie would just stop. He would lower his glasses. This is how it was. If he had his glasses on to read and somebody, God forbid, started to talk, he would just look at them, lower his glasses. That's it. And look at the offender. I can assure you that look was like being shot by a ray gun, and the offender shut up and didn't speak again. The story would begin, and my Uncle Solly had the job of asking the 4 questions. He was the youngest son, and he longed for the day when I would be old enough to do this. And when I was about 6 or 7, my grandfather painstakingly wrote out a transliteration, which I memorized, and my Uncle Solly was now free. I said the 4 questions, but I do remember him saying, God, I feel old now. I always sat at my Zadie's left arm on the sofa, and I followed along with him. Of course, I couldn't read Hebrew, but after years and years, I knew what came next, even some of the words. He was so proud of me as I followed along. At last, the first half was over, and we finally could eat. By this time, it was at least 8:30 at night, and we were all starving. Now, the Passover meal is a very traditional meal, and even though we all knew what was coming, we all looked forward to every single course. We would start with the chopped egg in the salt water, and one of my uncles would always say, this is so good, we should eat it all year round. But of course, we never did. And then came Bubbie's delicious chopped liver, served on a lettuce leaf with a slice of tomato. Forget Zabar's, forget the Fifth Avenue Deli, or any other wonderful place you could think of, because nobody made chopped liver like my Bubbie. And after that came the chicken soup with the baby chicken eggs in it, which were always saved for me. The soup was the elixir of life. It had everything in it. It had the chicken's neck, the gizzards, the feet, celery, carrots, dill, and you could add matzo ball to top it off. And in the middle of this heavenly elixir sat a matzo ball with gribenes inside. Now, gribenes, if you don't know, are fat, pure fat. But man, are they delicious. You have to remember that cholesterol was not yet invented, or if it was, we never heard anything about it. We just added salt and ate the whole thing. Next came chicken, brisket, potato kugel, and the dessert was just around the corner. Bubbie's dessert was always a wonderful fruit compote, sponge cake, and she always made her special Passover Ingbuff candies. That was a recipe that she brought with her from Russia. And one of my greatest joys is that I know how to make that. And so does your mother, my darling Sharon. And one day you'll know how to make it too. Finally, the afikomen was always found by me, and I would be granted a wish. I never got $1 for finding it. A wish was my reward, and I was thrilled about it. My final job was to open the door for the angel Elijah, Elia Navi. I would open the door as wide as I could in that narrow little hallway and flatten myself against the wall to give him room to fly through. And when I would come back to the table, all of my uncles would say, well, did you see him? And when I said no, they would all act shocked. What do you mean you didn't see him? We all saw him. How come you didn't see him? I remember thinking that maybe he flew by so fast I missed him. We were almost at the end now, and the best part was coming, the singing. Well, as you could see, this is making me very teary as I look back on those years, those wonderful, wonderful years when I was a little girl. Now that I am 81 years old, I am very sentimental, so just bear with me if I start to cry. The singing was coming. My Aunt Toby and my Uncle Solly had wonderful voices, and they would sing in harmony, and we would all sing heartily. And since the apartment was ground floor front, people in the street would applaud when we got done singing. And then my Zadie would close the book and say in Yiddish, he would say, "Min de Leben über ein Jahr und weiter singen," which means we'll live another year and sing again. And this day, to this day, when I make a Seder, I end it with those words. So, my darling girl, I hope you have fond memories of my Seders. Although the surroundings are so different and the family is so much smaller, the love that I have for you equals everything that I got. And my hope is that you will make your own Seder one day and remember your grandma and with as many fond memories as I remember my Bubbie and Zadie.